Hello, how are you? This is Patrick. A while ago, I posted an image showing the results of using one of Maya's new tools in the new Modeling Toolkit from Maya 2014 onwards. It's called Quad Draw, and I was using it for the purpose of retopologizing. The purpose of retopologizing, taking my original shape, I took a very dense geometry and just pull stuff out into the shape that I want to, but as a result, the edges and the loops will not run very efficiently, and I've got too much details in some parts, and on big parts that really needed the details, there were not enough edge loops running through, and they're not running through in the correct direction that I want. In retopologizing, we build a new object with the loops running in the right direction and with evenly spaced distribution on the surface so that we have an even spread of detail. Let's quickly go through and take a look at what Quad Draw has to offer us and how to apply it. So Quad Draw would be accessed by hitting this Modeling Toolkit. If you do not have this, you need to bring it up and enable it. Of course, I need to reiterate that it's from Maya 2014 onwards. If you have Maya 2014 onwards, you should go to Windows Setting Preferences and Plugin Manager and go down all the way to M where you see Modeling Toolkit. I have it loaded and auto-loaded. You will see this button, okay, when it's loaded. So when you click it, the menu would come down and Quad Draw would be over here. You can use Quad Draw as it is without anything to base your creations from, and it would be drawing and creating geometry off the plane. So you could draw anything you like. So the workflow would be you plot 4 points or vertex where you want them to be by clicking. Okay. After you've planted them, you can still move them around. And right now they're just aligned onto the surface of your grid. Okay, so no matter which view you are, they will still fall on the grid. So after you have your first 4 construction vertex, you can just hit your Shift key on your keyboard, move your pointer over into the center of these 4 points, and you would see a preview of the face that's going to be created. At this point, if you click, a face would actually be created and a new object called polysurface. So you can continue to plot your vertex, and then if you move your with Shift key depressed, you move your pointer over the areas, you realize that you can construct faces in a multiple a number of different configurations if you wanted. Okay, so I did an undo. I could do this, create a face like that, a face like that, and it doesn't encourage triangular faces. Okay, so let me undo a few times. Another way to create by other than clicking and clicking and clicking, you can do a shift on your to preview the first face, and then you can move your mouse across and drag it along the row of vertices. Okay, so shift and then click, and then I can draw like that. Alright, so that's how you create a row of faces. The next thing that you can do is to delete. So if you do a Control Shift and then you move your pointer over any of the faces, you can delete the face. Okay, the pointer has a cross, meaning that it's in delete mode. I can also move my pointer onto an edge, and when I click it, the edge will be gone. So if I move my pointer across the face and then click it, the face will be deleted. Of course, you can just hit, if it is a quad, you have vertices here, and that would form a 4-point face. So if you hit hold on to Shift key and then click this, you get your face back, right? The next thing you want to be able to do in CorelDRAW is to insert edge loops. So if you hold on to Control key and go to any of the edges, it will show you a preview of the edge loop that you would create if you click it. So I'm going to click it and it will create an edge loop for me. So very good at to be adding details on your model if you retopo. So this can be a modeling tool if you want to model some kind of pattern on your home grid. Okay, so that's the basics of CorelDRAW. So you notice that when I click this, it goes back to a regular surface without the black construction cage. Okay, if I had a few more construction vertex like so, if I get out, I lose them. Okay, I can deselect, I can select some other objects. So let's say I have a poly disk and I actually wanted to extend this with this P circle here. Let me delete the history of this guy. Delete history. Okay. With this P circle selected, and I go into CorelDRAW mode, you realize that the construction vertices that I had for the other project, the other object, is still here. CorelDRAW just remembers the last state where you left the tool, and when you click it again, regardless of what object you're selecting, it will make those available to you again. So maybe I create another construction vertex and I can start creating faces like that to extend my geometry. And that would be part of, if I exit my CorelDRAW tool, I would have sort of created faces from an existing object. In summary, that's what the CorelDRAW tool does for you. In this next section of what I'm going to show, we're going to actually retopologize an object. So let's get our sphere, or maybe we should just get a cone, do a 60-sided and 20, so we make it really, really dense. And I'm going to go into my Sculpt Geometry tool. I killed the history, so pull it out. Okay, so you have like really crazy kind of organic. Well, it's good for organic, but it's good for other things as well. Okay, so that kind of detail. Okay, so let's put whatever we've learned to good use and begin to do retopologizing. So from what we did just now, any new construction points and faces that we construct would be resting on the grid. So what we want it to do now is to use this object as a template. So any point that we plant, we want it to rest on this object. So the way to do it is make this object live. So with this P-cone selected, you want to click on this magnet. Okay. So I just want to bring your attention that my ordinary transform handle, translate handle, is just yellow square in the center. So once I click my select my P-cone and click the live magnet icon, it's no longer selectable. And if I were to create a cube and move it, you will see that it's sticking onto the surface of this cone, and you see that in my handle the center is no longer square. This is the same handle if I have my snap to grid, snap to curves, snap to vertex. If I am in one of those modes, you would see this. So in this case, make live, the object is snapped to the surface of my live object. So it's snapping to, when I'm moving, it's sort of constrained itself and sticking to the surface of this. Having that concept in mind, let's go into quad draw without selecting this p-cone, because this p-cone is going to be our template object to build our faces on. So go to quad draw. You can see that I still have my construction vertex. So what I want to do is just delete those. So actually, if you don't delete those, you can just drag them around, and because my p-cone is made live, you can see that when I drag them around, they were resting on the grid. Now they're just resting on wherever we point them and resting on the surface of the cone. So you can delete them, like Control Shift and then click this, and it's gone and delete it. But you can also just drag them, for my case, because they're already there anyway. Okay, so we're just gonna do a big faces to cover as much ground as possible, instead of having to dot out lots and lots of small squares. Okay, from time to time I like to turn on the show edges mode so that I know how to lay my lines and run my loops if I wanted to. Because I want to run my loops around this, so I'm gonna click on and build my first row of faces. Okay, so if I think that this is really too rough, I can just insert an edge loop holding onto my control key on the keyboard. So what just happened? This is I undid my whatever edge loop I created. You can see that if I were to create an edge loop with the usual insert edge tool, you will see that this edge is sort of like sticking out, right? But because we are doing this make live, okay, when I create my edge using this quad draw tool, you can see that it created the edge, but it also snapped the vertex to the curvature of this arc, and I did not need to. Let me undo that again. Okay, so with my control key selected, held down, and I click this, it sort of snapped to where it should be. Similarly, if you can see that some of the cage is sort of eating into the bulge that comes out of the original surface. If I insert an edge here and I click, you can see that the new edge loop is sort of conforming to, it's not really eating into the surface, it's sort of resting on where it should be. Okay, so that's really handy and saving lots and lots of mouse clicks and adjustments. I'm gonna undo that because I still want to do a rough shape first. Okay. So if you decide to run your loop in another manner, you still can do it by dragging along, because the surface is live, remember. So you can still plan your loops differently. Okay, because this is a sort of a corner, so I like to put my loops here. If you drag an edge, it would slide these two vertices along your surface, so you don't need to drag it here, that kind of thing. So small features that help you in your workflow. Okay, so you create your first ring like that, and then it might look to be not unevenly distributed, like big faces, so you can still drag them and space them out a little bit. Okay, so something like that. So and then I can run my second loop along this. Okay, so maybe taking this, Okay. And then running another row of you can see that from some angle it didn't allow me to create a face like from over here. I can't find an example actually. Yeah, I'll show you if it comes up again. Okay, so at some very extreme angles, it wouldn't allow you to create a face like that. If I hold on to my mouse, my shift key, and I expect a face to be formed like that, but because the angle is too extreme, like pointing perpendicular to my viewport, I have to shift my view around a little bit. Now when I click on my shift key, it forms a face like that, but not when my viewport is like glancing angle from the face. Okay, so I may need one more to insert an edge loop here, so I'll just continue to build upon whatever we're doing here, and I shall pause this until I sort of get a better shape. So now I've got my this knob kind of shape fleshed out. I'm gonna go down and plan probably a multiple of 8 or 4 sided kind of face. Okay, so what I was trying to do was if I wanted to join 2 vertices, I can just bring it to the other vertex and it will sort of snap. Thereafter, if I move it again, it would be merged as one. That would leave me with a triangular face, but that was just to show you that in Quad Draw we can merge vertices like that. Okay, so now to space them out properly, so I'm going to pause it again. What I've done up to now is creating and fleshing out and trying to spread as evenly as possible, leaving one triangle here, but everything else is sort of quads now, and for every row I sort of extended and joined to the other side as best as I can, and try and sort of level them up so that they approach the tip in an equal spacing. Okay, so here I'm finishing them off at the top. So what I want to do is for every 2 closer face, I create a vertex and then I sort of create a quad like that, and then I sort of wanted to sort of join the tip here to create a quad like that, but since I can't, I can just create a face here, a construction vertex here, and then create another quad here and another one. So I could join this here to my face, so I know that this tip here is having this face, this quad, and missing this quad. But this quad, we can do our snapping, where we grab this vertex and then just snap, and it will merge with the other quads. Now if I try to move it, they will all move as one. So if I go back to number 4, my wireframe view, and I hit number 3, I can see the shaded my black cage, but I can also see my smooth geometry like that. Okay, so let's momentarily get out of my quad draw, hide my cone, and take a look at our geometry that we built. So number 3, okay, you can see it's smooth like that, and the lines are running pretty nicely, pretty much how I want to run them. Okay, and the last thing would be to finish off this side. So I want to make sure that my P cone is still my live object. Go back to my poly surface, go back to quad draw, okay, and turn off my grid because it's getting in the way, and then again begin to run rings here, but I must pay special attention to the relief here where I need sort of bumps to represent that organic shape inside. Make sure that I'll run more lines here because there's a sort of a groove going on. Because this groove falls in the middle of the face here, I might insert an edge loop like that. Okay, and I can be sure that my edge loop sort of is sticking to the faces of my template geometry because it's a live object. Okay, I might run 2 edge loops, but let's just do 1 for now. And I'm putting my mouse over and checking that my faces are still remaining quad. So before I ran my edge loop, I'm doing my undo. You can see that I had a triangle here. So going back to holding my control key, clicking this. After I insert my edge loop, you can see that triangle has been resolved into a quad. Okay, this was not planned in advance, but it works out pretty nicely. Okay, and I can see that sort of I had a sort of a sharp edge here, so I'm going to use one of the edges sort of to spell out and shape out this so that my resulting shape will follow more closely to the original shape like that. So I have another ring, another sort of a edge here, so I might want to run my edges closer to this to better represent this shape. Okay, so after some time I've sort of closed the cavity inside by running. Okay, let's get out the quad draw, hide the P cone for a while by running a loop inside and then sort of resolving it, resulting in a single triangle, but everything else is quad. So going back to my cone, I can find that I have a lack of detail over here. Add another ring because the loops are running correctly. I can add 1 more ring, and same for here. I can run another ring, and then just to keep this edge sharp, I could now, because they're running correctly, I can insert an edge loop here. So let's do that to make this shape hold up closer to the original surface. Okay, going back to my quad draw, selecting my polyface, make sure that my P cone is still the live object, and just clicking on control key and turning on to create an edge, put my mouse over the edge. So just now it was sort of quite unmanageable because I hit number 3 on my keyboard, which had the smooth proxy selected. So I hit 1 again to go back to my base mesh, and so find a good spacing for the edge loop with my control key selected, click, and I got an edge loop. Okay, if I want these to be closer, I could just drag them so that the spacing is sort of the same. Okay, I'm dragging edges so that the 2 vertices get moved at a time. saving my mouse clicks because I'm using a Wacom tablet. Okay, and then over here I can insert another edge loop equally spaced. Now if I hide my cone and hit number 3 on my poly surface, you can see that, get out of my quad draw, sorry, you see this edge holds up. I might need more detail here, but let's add that extra ring from the inside, and maybe that'll be enough because the space is pretty tight around here and it's sort of uniform across the next few rows. So maybe all we need is just somewhere inside here. So showing the P-cone again, selecting the polyface, getting to quad draw, and insert another face here. And the new loop would be again sticking to the original surface because it was made live. Time to adjust a little bit more so that it fits the relief of the original object a little bit better. Okay, now let's get out of quad draw, sorry, hide my cone. Maybe I'll just take that cone out of live mode, and then now just hit number 3 to smooth out. I'll make sure that the original transform is 0, so I can just move it one side, unhide my cone. Okay, and you see that we've managed to achieve, well, that's a lot of history, so I'm gonna delete history. So managed to achieve a good representation. Okay, the only thing is small details like a slight dent here was not reflected because we don't have enough detail. Okay, one more thing that the final thing that I'm going to show you. Okay, let's put this guy back to 0 so that they are lying exactly on top of each other. Put this cone back as a live object, and then go back to my quad draw. Okay, the final thing that we want to do, okay, hit number 1 to go back to my base mesh. Sometimes we don't always get straight lines that are desirable. Okay, you see these squiggly lines. Of course, I can just go in and adjust them manually, but there's another way. Just like in your sculpting tool, when you just click on Shift, now that a face has been formed, an edge has been formed. Okay, my pointer now changes to something called relax. So this is a little bit like relax UV, where it will sort of try and even out the spaces between them. So if I wanted this vertex to take an average center around these 4 faces and thus giving them an equal amount of space, I can just move my pointer over this vertex, hold on to my shift key, and then I click it and sort of drag it around. You can see that it's sort of relaxing that point, okay, that vertex. So I can do that for this one, do that for this one. So if you do the relax over an edge, it will sort of relax 2 points and try and get the length of this edge to be sort of an average of the spaces around it. So I find this to be quite a good tool for getting my lines as a finishing touch, to sort of be running neatly and straight. Okay, if I were, because for these lines I was running them sort of in line with the horizontal, so I don't really want to mess them up that much. Actually, the same goes for these places, because there are some crevices that I actually want to represent by pinching my edges closer. I wouldn't want to do the relax on them too much. Again, because the P cone is the live object, when I'm doing my relax, my vertices are actually sliding along the surface, so they won't be sort of eating into or floating outside the original surface. So this is a very good, to me, it's for retopo operations, is better than the Sculpt tool, where you have a relax but it's sort of not sticking to any surface. Okay, so for here I had sort of a corner here that I want to maintain, so I wouldn't want to do a relax for this row, but over here we sort of want to make it to smooth it out, so I can do a relax. Not here, because there's a sort of a corner that I want to spell out with this. So do your relax sparingly and tactically. Okay, for rows of lines that you sort of want to run straight. If I went to relax this square, I would sort of bring my corner edge loop going up. What's a good candidate for relax is maybe here, where I don't have these guys spaced out properly, so relax them a little bit, and because this is also a sort of a, oops, undo that, you don't want the relax to touch these, so you want to work within these inner faces, so they try to sort of even out their areas. So yeah, so that's the final workflow and the final functionality that sort of finishes up my quad draw workflow. So bring the cone out of the live mode and push this away again. So now I have a much neater lines running across because of my relax, and that is the end. Okay, if I smooth this and I turn off this, you sort of be able to see some kind of similar shape. Okay, so that's the end of the demo. Hope you like it. Leave some comments or maybe more questions so that we can discuss further. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.